All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get going. We've got a nice crowd here. So thanks to all for being on time and for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started. And first thing I want to mention is you'll see on the bottom of your screen, there's a question panel. And if you have a question you want to ask during the presentation, just simply type it in there and we'll receive it and we will answer them all at the end of the presentation. So definitely go ahead and submit those. I'm going to get started today with a brief introduction of Munvo, and then I will have an introduction of today's presenters to you. And then once they're done with the event, I will return. I'll help with the questions and wrap up, and we'll try to answer really any questions that come in during today's webinar. However, of course, if you want to have a one-on-one discussion or you have something you want to talk about offline, we're going to have all our contact information at the end of the webinar, so you can absolutely reach out to us and we'll go ahead and get that arranged. So without further ado, let's get started. So for those of you who don't know us already, it's a pleasure to meet you. We're Munvo, and our one mission is to really help you maximize your MarTech investment. We partner with industry-leading MarTech providers, from Adobe to SaaS to Salesforce to Unica, why we're here today, Pega, ActionIQ, and Redpoint. Our in-house development lab, we also identify gaps in existing MarTech stacks and create complementary products that help to fill those gaps. We're definitely not new to this game. We've been doing it since 2005, actually, when we started as Client Spectrum with a single focus on Unica. And since then, we've grown to well over 100 consultants and developers with enterprise customers spanning North America and EMEA. Munvo offers services from implementation to marketing transformation to data and analytics and to marketing operations. So really a full service shop that can help you from the beginning of your journey with MarTech to helping you with training, helping you with integration, and everything in between. And I'm really thrilled to announce today's presenters, and we're lucky to have some great ones today. We've got Serge Bajalian, who's the VP of Professional Services with a focus on Unica, and Nick Ford, who's our technical practice lead, also with a focus on Unica. And we do have Steve Kopalik here as well from HCL, who's joined us and can come in at the end for any questions that may come up. So a welcome to all of you, and I'll hand it over to Serge to get started and take it from here.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for the intro. And thanks everybody for joining us on this call. We're excited to have you here. So the first thing is, a question we want to address is why upgrade? Why would you want to upgrade to version 12 of Unica? And the most obvious reasons is new features, as there are often in new versions of software. In this case, there are very significant new features. Unica Journey, which is a new way to marketing. In other words, instead of doing a batch and generating lists, for example, for email deployment, with Unica Journey, you can step through and design, for example, a welcome campaign or an onboarding campaign, and that will branch and do different things and continuously message people as they travel through that journey. You could do that before with Unica, but it was much more difficult to set up. And now as a journey metaphor, it's easier to do those types and that style of campaign. As well, there's Unica Deliver, which allows you to email directly. It becomes an ESP, email service provider, essentially. And it could replace the ESP you have now, or it could be supplemental as a backup to the ESP that you're using. In the case of replacing, it could save you money. In the case of supplemental, well, it could be a backup and give you much more reliability. Or just an alternative for different types of communications, perhaps you might want to use Deliver. And then Unica Link, which facilitates interconnection using new channels, setting up custom integrations, and so on. And there was numerous other improvements. I'll talk a little bit more about those. But other general categories of reasons why you might want to upgrade, one of them is prolonged product support, which is the case with enterprise software. You know, you're on a newer version, you can expect that version to be supported for a longer period of time. Older versions might be deprecated, or the support might be come to end of life soon. So you clearly are going to prolong that. And then updated environment support, very important, and often it becomes the driver in some organizations because maybe they need to go to a new database version, a new version of Oracle, for example, or a new application server. Maybe they're going to Tomcat, which is newly supported or recently supported, new versions of Java, directory server, or Kafka. So all of these things are reasons why you might need to upgrade as well. And then performance. There's performance in terms of the UI and the UX, and improvements in how you do things, and in your flow in the case of a Unica journey, for example. But also in certain cases, we've seen you're going to get faster run times. Not everyone will necessarily experience it, especially if your flowcharts are already running at a reasonably good speed. Probably not going to be noticeable, but we have seen, and we'll talk about that later, that in certain cases it can improve performance. And then just to elaborate, and this is borrowed from HCL, they have, their 12 reasons to upgrade, which I thought was useful, and I'm not going to repeat all of them because I talked about the first 3 there. But other reasons as well to elaborate is version 12 is cloud ready. Makes it easier to install and implement on the cloud. Traditionally, Unica has been about and implemented with on-premise servers that you need to maintain yourself. But now, more than ever, you can install and implement Unica on the cloud, on AWS, on Amazon, on Azure, for example. And Unica has made it much easier. We'll talk a little bit about how that's been made easier. And then there's easy content management integration or improved content management integration. There's centralized offer management and real-time rules based on expressions, which will give you more power and flexibility on the real-time rules that you use with Interact. And you can have eligibility based on dates and scores. And even on time, which was a useful feature that one of our clients wanted as well, so that an offer is made available or unavailable at certain times. And then strategic segment sharing, especially with real-time offers. So that's a nice plus and feature. Cross-session contact events. And I mentioned already prolonged product support, and not to be forgotten as well, MarTech compatibility. Often that last point becomes a driver. For security reasons, maybe they need to use, for example, a new version of Java, and the new version of Unica will allow you to do that. And that could end up being a driver for upgrading, for example. And I won't go into all of this. This is just to show you, this is the latest release, the 12.1.6. And HCL is continuing to add features, significant features. It's not just about bug fixes and a little maintenance release. There are some significant features that can make a difference, and I'm just going to call out a couple things on here. One of them is being able to auto restart and retry a flowchart. If the flowchart failed for any reasons, and often it was an external reason, for example, the database is unavailable. But if it fails for any reason, and you address that reason, you fix it, and you want to rerun or continue your flowchart, in the past you would have to go one by one and manually run the remaining process boxes. Well, now you can do that more easily. And then near the end as well, there's more environment support as well. As I said, every release note, every minor release has significant new features in there. And it's worth looking into them. And some of those might actually be very important for your organization. Now, key challenges. If it were easy, everybody would have done this already and we'd be done, but there are often challenges with upgrading. One of the challenges could be lack of in-house expertise or resources. Obviously, a partner like Munvo or HCL can help you with that. If you already have or already done an upgrade previously, I would say you have the skills necessary. And you still may want a partner or vendor to help you, but you're probably going to need a lot less assistance. It might be there to answer questions. If, on the other hand, you've never done an upgrade, it's not the kind of skill that most organizations want or need to keep in-house, because an upgrade is not done frequently. It's only periodically. It's not part of business as usual. Again, a partner or vendor can help you with that. Lack of budget. There are different ways to approach it, so we can do it in a more economical way. And one of the ones I sort of touched on, it could be you don't have the expertise, but you do have technical resources. they could still be empowered to do the upgrade, and we would assist and guide them. So that was one way that we can do that. As well, we can help you in terms of, okay, what are the minimum set of things that need to be done? How can we get the budget under control? Of course, running the project efficiently and well is one of the things that's going to keep your budget under control. Handling customizations and integrations. Sometimes there are things that were done in the past in the environment, and maybe the people who are maintaining or doing it are not there anymore. Maybe there's uncertainty about how to handle them. Again, a good partner or vendor can help you with those things. We had one particular client, and my colleague Nick also worked with that client. They had a previous vendor that had black boxed everything. So they didn't know what was done where and how it was installed, how it was configured. And we came in and helped with figuring that out. But more often it's minor stuff like scripts and FTPs and things like that, transferring the files that we can also make sure that we consider as part of the migration. There could be a replatforming necessary. That makes it more complicated. By replatforming, I mean, instead of just upgrading your environment in the existing place on the existing servers with the existing middleware, maybe you're moving to the cloud, maybe you're moving to a new data center. That would be a replatforming. And any number of variables might change in that scenario and does make it more complicated. But again, we can help you with that. And downtime and business continuity. Often these are mission critical. The marketing is going on continuously. It would be unacceptable to turn off marketing for a week or two, or even for a few days. So there's a lot of strategies to help with that, to do it in an efficient way. And most of the time we can minimize downtime. In some situations, almost no downtime. You literally just switch a URL. That is an option when you're usually going to a new environment, new servers. But if it's an in-place upgrade, then there might be some minimum downtime, and there are strategies as well where we can minimize that time or do it on off hours, on the weekend, for example, or at the end of the day. And training and user adoption. The good news there is if you're not using the new features, it's very low learning curve or for some of the new improved UX and improvements that are made. If you are using the new features, it's also not a huge learning curve to be able to use them. So training and user adoption is usually not a big problem, but we can help with that too. There are a few differences and a few different ways of working. And I'm going to, at this point, hand off to my colleague, Nick, and he'll go into more of the details of upgrading and what that would involve.
Thanks, Serge. I hope you all can hear me. I briefly wanted to describe the three main upgrade implementation types that we typically see. The first is a full installation, which is also known as a fast upgrade. And this is when you set up a parallel environment with its own servers and databases separate from your current dev and UAT production environments. In these new environments, you'll install a fresh, brand new, empty version of Unica on the target version that you plan on upgrading to. Once you've installed and tested in this fresh environment, you'll then copy over your old system table data to your new database, as well as a portion of your old file system to your new server file system that you set up. And then you simply need to run a couple of upgrade scripts in your new environments, and then you'll basically be ready to go in your new environment with all of your previous data, but now you're on the latest version. This is usually what we recommend doing for upgrades, since it really minimizes the downtime required for the transition to your new environment. In my experience, the downtime is usually a couple of hours, but you can really get that down and reduce it to, as Serge said, basically just switching your URL if you have some good coordination with the old environment, and also depending on how you sort of run your marketing campaigns. But the main benefit that I see is that you can really take all the time that you need to really fully test out your new environment. And you can work out any of the new bugs or issues that you encountered during your installation. And also you can just have some time to test out your new environment, or if you have a new middleware in your new environment, you can basically take all the time you need before you make that transition and you start to find all those bugs when it's too late. The second method is an in-place upgrade. And this is when you run your installer scripts directly on your current live environment. We usually only recommend this type of upgrade when you're performing a minor version upgrade, so a fixed pack or a hot fix or something like that. You can use this method with a full major version upgrade, and the benefit in that case would be that you don't sort of need to acquire new hardware and set up a whole parallel environment. But the downside is that it could require extensive downtime for each of the environments that you're upgrading. And that's because the servers can't be running while you're actually going through the upgrade process. This is also risky because any issues or bugs that you encounter during the upgrade will just extend that downtime even further. So if possible, we definitely recommend the full upgrade or the fast upgrade as it's called. So last implementation type we see, which Serge briefly talked about before, is a replatforming. And this is when you're migrating your entire Unica environment or your whole Unica platform to a different platform, such as migrating from on-premise to a cloud platform, for example. This can involve an upgrade, or it could just be maintaining your current version. But in either way, we usually recommend a similar path as the full installation, where you install a whole fresh environment and then copy your data over. This is the safest way, and as I said before, it really gives you lots of opportunities and lots of time to test out your new platform before really going live. And it's usually safest to try and keep your middleware and your operating system and your database versions either the same or as similar as possible to your previous environments. But as Serge said, this is definitely completely possible to switch out any of these. Let's say you want to change your database from Oracle to MariaDB. That's definitely possible in this scenario, but definitely does introduce some different challenges, as there's not always a one-to-one conversion for the different database types and the different data. So it's certainly possible, but there definitely isn't an increase of effort. So next I want to talk about Unica Cloud Native. So Unica Cloud Native was introduced in version 12, and it's essentially an alternative architecture for installing and deploying Unica. So instead of installing Unica manually using the installer scripts and manually deploying on web application servers and making sure you have all the necessary prerequisites, you basically deploy each Unica module as a separate container. Each of these containers not only has the individual Unica modules themselves, but also everything else required to actually run those modules. So it has the libraries, the drivers, if necessary, you have the actual web application servers all embedded within the containers. It uses tools such as Docker, Helm, Kubernetes to sort of orchestrate your installation and deployment. And it really allows you to sort of scale up or down the modules or add modules very easily sort of as you need them. For example, let's say you have a campaign listener, but it's really not able to handle the current load, or you maybe temporarily need to increase your load. It'd be very easy to just quickly deploy another listener container. It'll essentially function exactly the same as your first node, but you basically just deploy a second and it's good to go. You don't have to manually install and sort of set up a separate server. Everything is ready to go inside that container. And since the containers remove a lot of the overhead for the manual installation steps, deployments of modules can literally take as little as minutes, and upgrades can be as little as hours. So it makes it a lot easier to sort of update or add to your Unica environment. So next, I'm just going to get into some of the differences between a cloud native installation or containerized installation and a more traditional script-based installation, as we call it. So for the containerized approach, the main prerequisite is just setting up a Kubernetes environment. This will also include technologies such as Docker and Helm. Your organization may already be using some of these, which would make this a lot easier. Otherwise, you'll definitely need to prepare to sort of have resources to be able to manage these technologies in this sort of platform. But once you do have that set up, to install Unica, you'll first need to configure what are called Helm charts. These Helm charts are basically YAML configuration files, which you'll basically just need to edit the files themselves based on the modules that you plan on deploying. Here's where you enter your host names and your database connection details, everything like that. And once you configure the files, you basically just need to run a couple of quick commands using Helm and Docker, or Kubernetes and Docker and Helm. And then it'll basically just automatically deploy your Unica environment for you, just in the way you specified the file. So it's very easy to do. And again, if you want to sort of update or add modules, you just need to go back into those files, make some adjustments, run a couple quick commands, and then your updated environment is ready to go. To contrast that with the script-based installation, the first step we need to do is, of course, set up your hardware and your infrastructure. You need to make sure you have all the necessary servers and databases and all your other middleware. You'll need to install, configure all your drivers manually, install your web application server, make sure your data sources and everything are all set up and working. And then you can actually start installing Unica. And then you'll have to manually run each of the individual Unica installers. Sometimes you'll have to run upgrade scripts afterwards. And then finally, once you've installed all your individual Unica modules, you'll then need to sort of deploy them one by one on the web application servers. And then after all of that, then your Unica environment will be ready. It's definitely the traditional way of doing it. I don't want to knock it. It's certainly possible. It works great. But as you can see, the containerized or the cloud native version, it's a lot simpler to do, with the caveat that you're sort of prepared to sort of manage a Kubernetes environment in your organization. So now I just want to sort of review some of the main benefits that we see for Unica Cloud Native. The first one is portability. We've already discussed this a little bit, but since each container has everything required for each module, it's really easy to add or remove modules as needed without having sort of the lengthy manual installation steps or downtime. It's also really useful to replicate your environment across your UAT developments, production environments, since you're running the same containers in each of the environments. So you really know that you have consistency across all your environments. For resource isolation, since each container has everything necessary inside, you don't have to worry about multiple applications running on the same web app server. You can really isolate each module as required by your organization and not have to worry about different modules sort of conflicting or interfering with each other. For scalability, as I mentioned a few times, it's really easy to increase the amount of nodes or modules you have. Another good example of this would be for interact runtime. So let's say you're expecting a heavy load or increase in traffic. You could just very easily and quickly scale up the amount of interact runtime nodes you have to meet this demand. And when that demand is no longer there, you could basically just quickly or automatically scale it back down to the normal levels. Without having to have separate servers set up with different interact runtime nodes that may not be being fully utilized or basically just being turned off and waiting. You basically just have to run the nodes that you want to have at any particular time. And last is the flexibility. So Cloud Native works on any of the major managed Kubernetes clusters, such as Amazon's EKS, Google's JKE, Microsoft's AKS. You also have the option of running it on-premise. So if you still want to run it on your own servers, that's still definitely an option. You just need to install Kubernetes, Docker, Helm, and you could basically still run Cloud Native the same way as you would as with a managed Kubernetes cluster with all the same benefits. So with that, I'll pass it back to Serge for the last few slides.
Thanks, Nick. So let me talk about our approach. Let's say you've committed now to doing an upgrade. What would be the steps, the high-level steps we want to undertake? And what you can see is very standard, and this could apply to most technology projects. In fact, you would have a discovery stage, upgrade and planning, and then the execution. And the execution would include each environment that you would have. Most enterprises would have at least a non-production and a production environment. And some enterprises may have even more, up to 5, 6, 7, 8 even environments I've seen. But more typical 2 or 3 environments. So the execution would be on each one of them, one after the other, and there would be, for each one of them as well, would be testing and validation. And then at the end, there would be a support stage. Now, all of this, it's very much a waterfall kind of approach, but it could also be done pseudo-agile. In the sense that we could have stories and progress or whatever, but you still have these milestones that we want to hit and these stages that we want to do, and they're deliverable at the end of it. And some of those intermediate deliverables that we would have in an enterprise environment, the expectations are definitely higher. You know, we want to do discovery, we want to confirm exactly what the requirements are and document those in the business requirements document. And as well, separately document the technical requirements. We would have test plans. We can assist with developing user acceptance testing, and we will, as a vendor, we would typically perform unit testing, but we would often engage with the client to do user acceptance testing. And then there would be environment certifications from that, and non-production environment certifications. The upgrade plan, of course, precedes all of that. And while we do the upgrade, there would be a runbook or a playbook, which would be a detailed step-by-step procedure of everything that was done. It's good for documentation, it's good for security reasons. It's also good potentially for reproducing and doing again, or learning. And of course, provide weekly status reports on the progress. And this helps it helps with monitoring, and it helps to make the project more successful as well, more likely to be successful. Now, $1 million question, how long does it take? An easy answer is it depends. So it depends on a lot of things. As Nick mentioned before, the process can be, and at its core, very easy. The reality is, in most enterprise environments, there are multiple considerations. You have to know, do all those steps and deliverables that I mentioned before, capture all the business requirements and the technical requirements. There can be any number of environments, and of course, organizational rules, security rules, onboarding, change requests. All of that makes it potentially take longer, and it really depends on the organization. So it could be a few weeks. Typically, I mean, if we're doing it in our own environment with no security considerations, it could be a few days. But the reality is, and in most enterprises, it's at least a few weeks, and it can be a few months, in fact. But we can help you with figuring out how complex it is for your organizations and giving you a more detailed estimate specific to your use case, your environment, and your needs and requirements. And then I just want to also end on this particular example or use case. So it's a large financial organization, over 80,000 employees, 3 million customers, and over $7 trillion in assets under management. And they needed to upgrade their Unica environment. Their drivers in their case was they wanted to go from WebSphere to using Tomcat, which is free and doesn't have licensing costs associated with it. They want to transition to a newer version of their Oracle database, and they wanted to transition to a new data center. There were a lot of challenges. One of them was the fact that although the version of Oracle and the database was going to be upgraded, it had to be on the same servers, which meant we had to do an in-place upgrade, or we couldn't do a cutover or switch over completely, at least for part of the upgrade. So, as I outlined before, we did the detailed discovery, came up with a plan, and executed it, and as well did extensive testing in the multiple environments that they had. I believe it was 5 environments that we had to test with in this case. And it was quite successful in the sense that we did manage to do, even though we weren't able to do a full fast upgrade, we were able to minimize the downtime. It was done within a weekend. There were some, it wasn't without any hiccups whatsoever, but HCL was also very good and responsive about identifying and helping to resolve an environment-specific issue that they had. And then, by the Monday morning, the environment was up and ready with some minimal issues that needed to be addressed, but the users were using the environment. One of the things I want to call out, I mentioned before, is sometimes flowchart performance can be improved. And this was the case that we saw. They had many long running flowcharts, as you can see here, running over 2.5 hours in some cases. And then right after the upgrade, the run times went down to less than 30 minutes most of the time. So there was a significant performance improvement in this particular case. So just in summary, lots of reasons that you want to upgrade, not the least of which is the new features, but it also could be because of new environment support that you absolutely need. Upgrading has a lot of potential challenges, but it also offers opportunities for improved performance, improved workflows, improved ways of working. And it could even, from a security point of view, be a necessity, like if you don't even have an option. And of course, Cloud Ready allows you to maybe re-platform and move away from your on-premise environment. That could result in significant cost savings as well. It shouldn't be underestimated in the enterprise environment, in the enterprise context. So in terms of next steps, well, a good service partner, obviously like Munvo, can help you get there, can help you, walk you through the process, and maybe, of course, happy to help you with that. HCL as well as a vendor is a good resource.
So thanks a lot, Nick and Serge. It was a great presentation, and we did get some good questions that came in during the webinar. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started.
Sure.
So for the first one, in your experience, what's been the most beneficial new feature or benefit from the upgrade based on what clients have been seeing?
Well, if you're using the new features like Journey and Deliver, obviously those are significant things. In case of Deliver, you could be replacing your ESP and get a lot of cost savings. And in terms of Journey, new ways of marketing are a much easier way to do, for example, an onboarding campaign or a welcoming campaign. So that affords new ways of working. In the last use case that I described, in that case, there were a lot of efficiencies in the UI and the interface, a lot of minor things, but the flowcharts running half an hour versus 2.5 hours, that's obviously a big savings. That's a lot of time saved. And, the extended support that you get and addressing of previous minor issues. So it really depends on the client and what their driver and their business requirements are. But those are some of the key things that I've seen. So even if you don't use any of the new features, all of those other things that I mentioned before come into play. The enhanced security, the cloud readiness, also very important. As Nick even mentioned, it could even be on premise. You could take advantage of that, where you're using a containerized approach instead of a script-based approach, and then you can resize your environment or adapt or change your environment much more easily.
Great, thank you. No, that makes sense. So here's another one, kind of from a user perspective, someone thinking if they've had a lot of flowcharts. What's involved with migrating flowcharts? Do users need to go into every flowchart and make changes? Can you talk a bit about that process, maybe?
Yeah, if you're using the same technology, for example, the same database technology, and there aren't other environment changes, the database is the big one. Usually there's almost no work involved. It will be part of the upgrade process. The file system and the database schema are copied over, and there's a little bit of work to sync that, because at the moment that you're copying, you shouldn't be working in the environment, otherwise it becomes out of sync. But once that's copied over, then you go into your flowcharts, you use them, and they work the way they worked before. And so it's very transparent. If, on the other hand, for example, you went from Oracle, the case that Nick mentioned, going from Oracle to MariaDB, there are inevitably differences between the way the databases work, the syntax, date formats, data formats. And if you're using raw SQL in your flowcharts or custom macros, there could be some work adapting that. If you're not using any of that or minimally using that, it's easier. But the more you use those kind of, and scripts as well, there could be custom scripts that are taking advantage of low-level features that are very technology-specific, database-specific. And then there's going to be more adaptation in that case. But for most users, you will not have a situation where you have to go into every flowchart and test everything. You'll usually do unit testing. You'll test a major flowchart, a major thing, make sure everything works the way you expect it to work. But you don't have significant migration work. Nick, I don't know if you want to add to that or other issues that you might have seen in terms of migrating data.
Yeah, I think you covered most of it. A lot of the issues that I've seen are just around, as you said, like the triggers and stuff like that. It's usually not Unica itself, but it's more like the middleware changes that happened in the transition. So just have to go in and update maybe some custom macros or some triggers based on if your database changed or your operating system has changed or something like that. But for the most part, the flowchart should function exactly the same as they did before the upgrade.
Yeah. And it's true,
No, it's great.
not just flowcharts, but most of the objects that you would have, whether it be template items or custom macros or things like that.
No, it's great. It doesn't sound bad, and it kind of leads to a logical transition to the next question I see here, which is how does V12 handle backward compatibility with our existing campaigns, assets, and customizations?
Yeah, and so backward compatibility is handled in the scripts and the process. It's part of the whole upgrade itself. And only if your middleware changes do you generally have any issues that you have to think about. Like if the database changed. And there could be little, like if you were going from WebSphere to Tomcat, there could be some issues there. The way things, you have to make sure you get all your configuration items and your compatibility items correct. But for the most part, you shouldn't have to worry about it, especially if your middleware does not change.
Nice, nice. Well, we have time for one more, so we'll take this last one. What strategies or best practices do you recommend for data migration and ensuring a smooth transition during the upgrade?
So data migration, if, for example, you were replatforming, the trickiest thing is probably syncing your data. And I touched on it before, which is you'll continue to work normally, but then at some point you might sync your data, or you will sync your data, your file system and your database data. And then that will give you all of your flowcharts and your objects, and then you'll in your new environment. One strategy is we like to, because that process could be time sensitive. You want to minimize the amount of time because that will represent downtime. And you might want to even do a trial run or a dry run on that. So you know how much time it takes to copy. If it's your very large organizations and you have terabytes of data, you know, it might be something that takes hours where you thought it might take, less than half an hour. So doing a dry run on that and making sure you have each step and documenting each step properly and not having firewall issues or network issues, that sort of helps. And then that dry run, you will test, test the data, you'll test that everything that works, and then you can be confident it is. And then after, you might do the actual syncing of the data, and that's where it's going to be time sensitive. But at the end of that, you'll be much more assured that you understand the process, your downtime will be minimized, and you're less likely to encounter issues syncing. Nick, would you add anything to that in terms of strategies?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Serge. For a previous upgrade, we actually did do a trial run, or like a sort of rehearsal, where we actually just copied over and basically mimicked the actual migration part. So we copied over the data and the file system while the old environment was still running as normal. And when we actually did that, we did identify a couple of bugs that or a couple of issues that we didn't sort of see coming. And we were able to sort of take care of those before we actually went live. And that would have saved us a huge hassle because it did require us a couple of hours to work through those bugs. If I recall, I think there was some issues with some of our custom scripts, but if we didn't actually go through that full sort of dress rehearsal, then we would have sort of been delayed in our cutover. So yeah, I highly recommend doing that. And that's also only possible with the fast upgrade, which allows you to keep your old environment running while your new environment is still being tested out.
Exactly. And it allows you as well, because when you do a fast upgrade, you kind of have a clean environment without your data, without your objects, without your flowcharts. And doing that dress rehearsal on a data sync allows you to test with real data. And then when you do the actual sync, you sort of throw that away or whatever, you resync with the real data, and then it's business as usual, and you continue where you left off, if you will. Of course, while you're doing that sync, there's a stoppage. You don't continue to work, because otherwise, what are you syncing with? It's something that's in flux or in change while you're doing it. But that is one key strategy that we definitely recommend in a lot of environments and a lot of situations. If it's a brand new environment, of course, you don't need to worry about that. There's no data sync. You're installing it, or maybe you're not bringing objects over, or only minimally doing so. That's an unusual situation. That's not a typical upgrade, but it can be the situation for a new division or group or organization, for example.
Well, thanks a lot, Serge and Nick. No, you guys covered a lot. Thanks for fielding those questions on the fly for us. So you made it to this point in the presentation, and so what's stopping you from getting started? We just wanted to tell you kind of what the next steps are you can take to make sure your upgrade's a success. So it's really simple. Honestly, just reach out to us for a free complimentary advisory session. We really can start to understand your unique situation, your goals, your what environment you're moving from and to, and help put together an SOW and a plan, help you get that approved and help you get started. So we've seen a lot of different, like I mentioned at the beginning, we've been working with Unica since 2005. So we've seen a lot of different environments and not a lot that surprises us. So we can quickly move from that initial call into action. And so how do you get in touch with us? You can just, scan the QR code, go to our website, LinkedIn, contact us, any of the above, and we'll be in touch. And I also realize, we're in a world where we're all on more video calls than we imagine. So you might be watching this right now, not live. So if you have a question that came up while you're watching it, just reach out to us and ask the question. We'll be in touch. No commitment necessary. But for now, I'd like to thank our presenters, thank Serge, thank Nick, thank you all for attending. Really appreciate that. And I've been Alex Ewer. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.